November 16, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting notes of November 16, 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's all unanimous. At this time, I would entertain public comment for tonight. Okay. Charles, Charlotte, I'm sorry, didn't read the name right. Charlotte, love to hear from you. Thank you for coming tonight.
And what's been around. I am Charlotte Persons. I live in Olympia. I represent Friends of Trees today in my comments and ask you please to continue to protect the Davis Meeker tree. Friends of Trees supports the preservation of trees in general, and particularly mature trees. Scientific studies have shown that mature trees draw down and sequester many more times carbon dioxide than young trees. Their root systems also store more water during droughts and are a stronger bulwark against flooding. The bigger the tree, the more services it offers to humans and to wildlife. You will hear many comments today. I hope there'd be a lot of comments on the science of preserving the Davis Meeker tree. Retrenchment pruning versus a system of cables and bracing. Perhaps both may be needed to preserve this tree. Both systems promise a tree structure that will be healthy enough to be safe. Computer problem here. However, scientific reasons for keeping the tree alive and the science that will keep it alive are not what will save this tree. What is important is not science. It is community support. Ancient trees are classified as historic because of their connection to our human past, in this case to prehistory, since the Davis Meeker tree sprouted 200 years before white settlers arrived. We do not know how Native peoples cared for this tree, or even how it survived the wagon wheels of the Oregon Trail. We know only its recent history, when Jack Davis and others fought to have the road rerouted around it. Our community's recent care for the Davis Meeker tree reminds me of that for the Pakadi, a drooping fig tree in Devdaha, Nepal, said to be more than 2,000 years old. I visited it 7 years ago because it is close to the village where my daughter-in-law was raised. How the tree has survived so long is a mystery because it is in the middle of agricultural fields. About 10 years ago, teenagers climbing the tree and cars driving too close to the tree caused damage. But local villagers came together to protect the Pakadi with a fence and live-in watchmen. I'm sure that with the same kind of community will and donations, the Davis Meeker tree can be saved for more hundreds of years. I hope you commissioners have faith that our community will come together to protect this tree. I urge you to decide today not to delist it. Instead, I suggest that you could be part of actively working to preserve the tree. For example, could you help sponsor a voluntary donation fund for the preservation effort? That is one suggestion among many you will hear. However, your first action is not to delist the tree. Keep the door open for future community action. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
We have about 8 people online. So we can
Let's go with Doug Gill.
Okay, let me go.
Okay, I am going to go down this list for all of you as attendees, allow you to talk. So just first, I'm going to start with Janine.
3 minute.
3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the comment period today that we're allowed to talk about this incredibly beloved and venerable tree. I guess I'm not scripting this. I really just want to say that I'm asking you to not delist this tree tonight as the first in a process of taking out this tree and removing it. I read through most of the packet that was provided on the Gary Meeker oak, and I will draw your attention specifically to a couple things which I find in conflict. Tyler Bunton from the Tree Solutions was hired by the city to do a qualified review of the tree. He and I think a colleague, George White, both determined that, quote, the tree should be managed as a veteran tree and have retrenchment pruning performed to reduce the tree height and spread by approximately 15 feet. Reducing the tree height and spread will result in lowered wind loads acting on the trunk and branch unions, resulting in a lower likelihood of failure. He also went on to say the tomogram, which was the science that he performed on that tree, indicates there is slightly more sound wood than is required to support the tree. And also that with the exception of the recent large branch failure, the Meeker oak appears to be in very good health. The crown density, the leaf color, leaf size, and internode growth all indicate a vigorous tree. So with the expert opinion in this case coming in and having done the most comprehensive research on this tree, I don't quite understand why it is that the arborist has come to the decision or the suggestion that he is forwarding to the City Council and the Heritage Commission or the Historic Preservation Commission. And we ask you not to delist this tree, a 400-year-old tree, a tree that's been around 150 years longer than this nation has every right to exist for its own purpose, for its own existence, but also we owe it the ability to live its life out in a natural way at the very highest level that we can possibly afford it. So retrenchment, possible reinforcement of that tree, even the cutting of that tree will be acceptable to a public, but removing this tree is not the right decision. There's many of us from the Native Plant Society, from the Thurston Climate Action Team, from the Pacific Northwest Forest Climate Alliance. I mean, many groups who cannot be here tonight would speak out and say, this tree deserves to live. So please do not delist this tree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will go on to Beowulf Brower.
Let's see, can you all hear me there?
Yes.
So let's see, I'm going to read through this at an extremely rapid pace here. My name is Beowulf Brower. I'm an arborist employed by Washington State Parks. I also work for several interagency partners, similar capacity. All opinions expressed here on my own do not reflect any official position of Washington State Parks and Recreation Commission. I state my job only for context. I manage the health and assessment of some of the largest and oldest trees under state ownership. As such, I'm very familiar with issues affecting our best trees. In reviewing the report by Kevin McFarland, several issues and contradictions were evident, which I'll expand upon, here. Starting from the beginning of the document, the condition of the tree in Table 3 is listed as poor. However, at the bottom of the next page, Mr. McFarland says of the tree that, with the exception of recent large branch failures, the Meeker oak appears to be in very good health. Pursuant to a conversation with Mr. McFarland, the illustration labeled extent of decay column was derived from sounding the tree with a mallet. The year is 2024 when we can and must do better than this. A micro-resistance drill is a common tool in the consulting arborist toolkit in this day and age. This device would have provided demonstrable evidence of the extent and characteristics attributable to decay. I know that Tree Solutions, who is contracted for tomography work, has such a device, as well as several climbing arborists on staff who could have easily carried out this work. To decide the fate of a historic tree by striking it with a mallet is disrespectful of its status and should be relegated to a previous age. Onto the actual tree risk assessment form, there are major errors in the risk categorization table. As submitted, the assessment's likelihood of failure is listed as possible, and likelihood of impacting target is listed as high. By referencing matrix 1, this would result in a somewhat likely likelihood of failure and impact. Mr. McFarland wrongly listed it as likely. This might seem inconsequential, but when this mistake, which occurred in both main conditions of concern, is applied to matrix 2, the final risk rating is incorrectly elevated from moderate to high. Furthermore, the document using the ISA basic tree assessment form gives a specific example of a medium likelihood of impacting a target as, and I quote, an example of medium likelihood of impacting people could be passengers in a car traveling down an arterial street, frequent occupancy, next to the assessed tree with a large dead branch over the street. This is not congruent with the assessment of target number 1 of condition number 1. The target we should be worried about are the motorists using the road, not the road itself. Roads are made from asphalt, and being struck by a branch would be inconsequential to their condition. As such, a medium likelihood of impacting the target, being people, with a possible likelihood of failure would yield an unlikely likelihood of failure and impact. This is reflected in the history of the failures of this tree. On neither recorded occasion has there been a recorded injury. Similarly, target 3 of condition 1, identified as north and south parking, could be easily remedied by closing 3 parking spaces to the south and perhaps 3 to the north. Given the prevailing wind direction is south by southwest, it is not likely to impact north parking spots in a windstorm. It is also notable that no branches from the tree overhang or grow in the direction of either parking area. As such, the risk of impact from a large scaffold branch would be at most medium. I personally would put it as low. In either case, a similar result of a finally likelihood of failure and impact of moderate to low rather than high would occur.
Can you have you finish wrapping up? You've met your 3 minutes.
This report is, well, I'll just read the very last sentence here. To see this tree finally fell to a litany of errors on a form would be a disservice to history and the natural world. It would also be, as expressed by the public comment at the tree board's meeting, entirely against the wishes of the city's residents. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Under the ground rules of this meeting and its public hearing, public comment component, do we have the ability to dialogue with Mr. Bowser?
No, we do not.
Or any individual?
No, we do not.
We could call for a subsequent work session with them, presumably, if we wanted to.
I have no idea.
If that fits within the calendar of this project, you could do that. If there are questions that are coming from speakers that you want to delve into further with staff or with our tree consultant, we'll write those down and we'll discuss those when you get into your discussion period about what you hear.
Can I extend my point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
In the absence of being able to do that tonight, and since we have the testimony that was just rendered in writing that came late this afternoon, would we have the ability to actually, through Chuck's aid, someone he might designate, and I see Mr. McFarland is also standing by, I'd like to walk through the matrix analysis provided in the last comment is very intricate, hard to understand in reading it, let alone hearing it. And I'd actually like to walk through it step by step to see the logic model of what the testimony conveys, if that's possible, before making a final, or at some point during our deliberations.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of our plan is to go through that and have Kevin go through what he did and why and what he found and his characterization of what that is.
Okay,
So we can get into as much depth as you want about
Okay,
the scientific part.
that concludes my question.
David, I expected that we would have the opportunity to ask that question through Mr. McFarland later on when we
Okay.
have. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you for your
I-
comments. Next person.
Okay, we have Kathy Chapman. Kathy, if you are talking, we can't hear you quite yet. Okay, we will come back to you. I can see that you unmuted, but maybe try to switch your audio. So then we will go to Eileen.
My guess, Brianna, is that Councilmember Swartout is just listening in.
Okay, just wanted, so then we've got Janine Gates.
I'm not intending to speak. Thank you.
Okay. So then June H.
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you. Hi, I'm sorry I'm signing on late and am I supposed to be talking about a certain thing right now?
Oh, this is the public comment period.
I would just like to say I would be for saving the 400-year-old oak tree that's in Tumwater. I think that we have to take care of our big trees. They're very important for solving our climate crisis. And I think if we can save it, that would be the best for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, but I'm Lieta. Okay. Teresa.
Yes, I am in favor of saving the tree, and I appreciate the comments from the man who just previously spoke. And a work session, I think, would be highly desirable and could clear up lots of things for the public, and that perhaps this decision shouldn't be made lightly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Janine, I do see your hand up. I'm gonna go through the entire list and then I will come back to you. So we have Valerie. Okay. So Janine did raise her hand. She did already complete her public comment. What would you like?
We have one more comment from the floor.
Okay, then I will come back.
Doug?
I've been a 52-year resident of Tumwater. Grew up here, worked for the park department 50 years ago as a summer help. Worked in the trees and stuff, and worked for Weyerhaeuser down in Coos Bay, Oregon, and I saw many, many old trees like this oak, all cut down. We cut down 250 square miles, cut it all. You could drive up to the ridge and look down towards Roseburg, not a tree in sight. There were some left in the valley we couldn't get to. So when I saw those trees 400 years old, I remember the fight that we had 40 years ago to save it. We had to move the road out of the way, and people came up for that. Well, this time I just found out about it maybe 2 weeks ago in a little email thing. There's no paper that does Olympia anymore. It's out of Tacoma. And so I saw this and I thought, well, I'd like to be involved in it, but I've got other things going on in my life, so I couldn't do the digging like some of these other people did, which I agree with wholeheartedly what they have to say. But I think we need to save that tree. That's the last old tree we have around here that I know of. 400 years old. Is there anyone around here at all? They cut them off. Weyerhaeuser saved none. They cut them off. Now they moved out. That's the Mill Casino now, down there in Coos Bay. They are logging it because it's a 35-year retention span. They could grow trees in 35 years. But I'm surprised all of a sudden it comes down to one meeting that 400-year-old oak could be gone. We vote yes, and that thing's gone. There's no public comment. We got public comment, but it wasn't much community output that I could see because everything's done by email or texting and stuff like that. There's a new way to communicate. So I'm for saving that tree, so much it costs. I think I would like to give money towards saving that tree. I think most people here have been through Tumwater many years, and people 20, 40, 50 years. So Prosper Road, I used to buy their pipe back when I was a kid. It's still under the ground, you still see it. at times out there on the street when they put these new roundabouts in. So anyway, I'm voting here. Don't take a vote today. Postpone it, do a survey, get a group together and see what we can do for that tree. It's been here 400 years, a lot longer than we've been here. So that's my opinion. I think you should do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for coming tonight. Is that the end of the public part? Correct on that?
We do have someone with their hand raised that has already made a comment. How would you like me to proceed with that? That's your call.
Let's do it.
All right.
Last one.
Okay, Janine, you're back.
I appreciate that. I know it's a second comment. I don't think I filled my 3 minutes out, but I also wanted to add that I think it's very important that tonight's meeting was very difficult to access. I had multiple emails with Ann Cook. I contacted Mr. Denny. I could not use any of the links that were provided in the normal channels to get to this meeting tonight. Finally, I was able to locate a page that had this Zoom meeting web address on it, but it was incredibly difficult. And I want you to know that I agree with your committee member who talked about holding a hearing, because the public was not able to attend this meeting tonight in the channels that it should have been able to. So and I went back and checked these links tonight that Ann Cook told me were now live again. You know, there was apologies. I'm sorry that those, weren't live when they were said to be live. Tonight they didn't work. There was 2 different links to check to get to, first we were told we had to register for this meeting. Then I was told, no, you don't have to register. Here's the, address for it. It was very difficult. And so the public access to this meeting was very limited. And I think based on that alone, that I would ask that you hold some other form of the ability for the public to come into this meeting, because it was just almost impossible really to figure out how to get in. So I appreciate you considering that. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the comment. That ends the public comment. So the next item on the agenda before we get to a discussion of the delisting of the tree according to the agenda is the election of 2024 chair and vice chair. I need to let you know that I will be moving out of the city of Tumwater on about the 1st of June, and we're downsizing, which has been an interesting experience. But I have checked with Chuck Denny, and Chuck, if you want to explain the city ordinance, I'd rather have you do it than me
By city code and the makeup of the Historic Preservation Commission, we have to continue to have 2 members who we consider historic professionals. Dave Shipley is one of those, and Dave Nicandri is the other currently. One of the members does not have to live in Tumwater, can live within the regional area if they're able to still fully participate in the meetings. That process requires the mayor to approve it and the city council to approve the mayor's decision. And then we can have one of those members living outside of the city limits, but still fully participating as part of the commission. So we're planning to go through that process with Chair Shipley so he can continue as a valuable member of this commission.
In short, I don't mind being continuing on the commission, but if you don't want me as a chair, that's okay. But I'd love to be on the Historic Commission. We're hoping to sell the house and move around the 1st of June. Been our goal for a long time, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Mostly wife needs to have a different direction. But anyway, I'd like to entertain the nominations for chair for the current 2024 year, and it will last until January of next year. So nominations, please.
I'd like to nominate Chair Shipley to remain as chair for 2024.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded for somebody named Dave Shipley to continue as chair. Any other nominations? I will entertain a vote. All in favor of that guy, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? One time I said yay, but I won't do that. Okay, vice chair, on nominations for vice chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
Can you remind us who the current vice chair is? We're so used to you in that position. We've never had to execute that option.
Kind of reminds me, it was announcing football games. I did it for 44 years, never missed but one football game. So
Marnie?
home football game at Jefferson Junior High and Capitol High School. So I don't plan on missing very many meetings. To remind you, Dave, he sits between us. His name is Alex.
Accordingly, I nominate Mr. Rossiter to be our vice chair.
Second?
Yes.
Okay,
I
it's
second
been
it.
moved and seconded to Alex continue as a vice chair at the Historic Commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have taken care of that. We are, and thank you for the vote of confidence, I guess we will call it. We are to finally number 7 on our agenda, the old oak tree down on Old 99 Highway. And Chuck, I believe you were going to do the opening remarks. Is that correct?
Yes.
Before I continue, Chuck, I'd like to make a comment if people are listening on Zoom or whatever, but I wrote a note to myself to remind myself, but the Historic Commission members want to really appreciate the people that took time to make the public comment. And I don't know how many letters I read, but there had to be 70 or 80 letters. It took me a long time to read them. I can speak for the Historic Commission. I am positive they have read all of them. It took us a while to get, or at least for me to get through them all. And we appreciate the time and the interest and the effort made by the public in an important tree. We welcome you to make further comments on other historic sites in Tumwater, not just the old oak tree. But anyway, it was my way of saying thank you for taking the time to make comments either publicly in person or online or on the very long letters that we read during the course of the day. So thank you very much. And now we will go to Chuck. I'm sorry to interrupt you on that one, but Chuck.
Great comments. And I'm glad you took the time to do that. We're working on getting a short PowerPoint up on the screen, and we have the full support staff here tonight with our city's IT manager, the communications manager, 2 of our staff. So we'll get this going. Let me start by
People online able to see this?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we sent you 72 emails today about this issue. Some agreeing with the urban forester's position, many not. And a very emotional issue for a lot of people, and we certainly understand that. Some misinformation that's out there that we can just put to bed right now. This issue doesn't have anything to do with Capitol Boulevard or Highway 99. People can see that online in the city's transportation plan. There are plans to expand Capitol Boulevard through the airport property, but it doesn't affect this tree at all. The current plans still go around where this tree is. It doesn't have anything to do with the Port of Olympia or plans at the airport or a plan to try to expand the airport or anything at the Port of Olympia. So that didn't play into this tree study at all. It doesn't have anything to do with potential future development with the proposed Coca-Cola manufacturing facility or any other building development on the Port of Olympia property. This is very specifically dealing with this tree, the health of the tree, and the risk that it represents. So knowing all that, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and we're not getting confused by these outside issues that don't really exist.
I may also add for people who may be on Zoom that today the Tumwater on Tap publication came out and it indicated basically what Chuck Denny just mentioned. So if you don't get the message online, Tumwater on Tap, contact City Hall and get the information that way, because what he just said is pretty much stated in there as well. So Chuck, do we go to?
I'm going to talk to you for a little bit.
What's that?
I'm going to talk to you for a little bit.
Okay.
So as we go through this.
Okay. Sorry about that.
And I'm not sure which, but towards the airport. As you heard in the public comments, the tree is estimated to be somewhere around 400 years old. You know, we've heard stories in talking with the Squaxin tribe that the native tribes use this tree as a marker or a directional point. We know that the early pioneers used this tree as a directional marker as they came up this part of the Oregon Trail, which ended in Tumwater, right? And State Highway 99 was built around this tree, and improvements to that road have continued to be built around this tree to try to protect and preserve it. It is on the Tumwater's Historic Register since 1996, and you can see that the county recognized the tree, and there's actually a sign out there from that recognition in 1999. So the tree has a long history with the city. This isn't the first time that we've dealt with health issues with the tree. I've been in Parks and Recreation here for a long time, and our staff has been out there multiple times over the years to deal with falling limbs. We have had studies done before, and some of those were pre-computer days, and we don't have those studies now. Unfortunately, I couldn't find those things, but I have been here a long time, and the very first park staff member who has been here 38 years has done work on this tree for us, and I met with him and talked about it and some of the things that we've done. There used to be grass and vegetation, shrubs around the tree. And working with an arborist about 2 decades ago, there's a recommendation to remove the tree, remove the grass, remove the shrubs, and supplement the soil. So we've done soil amendments, we've done aerification, we've done fertilization, and we've done really deep tine aerification. So long spikes into the ground to break up the soil and get air to the roots over the years. So I think there's some thought that the city has never even looked at this tree before, and all of a sudden we're saying, geez, there's a problem and it's rotting and we want to cut it down. And that's just not the case in any sense. So in this summer in June, there was a large branch failure on the tree, and that's really started this whole process. After this branch fell, it's about 18 inches in diameter, and you can see from this picture, I think I have a working unit here now. This picture, this rot area around the tree, as you really look at this piece that fell, you can see the good wood is really just right around the edge that's keeping these branches hanging on. So it was at this time that we contacted Kevin McFarland, Sound Urban Forestry. They are the contracted arborist for the city of Tumwater. Kevin has worked with us for many years on many projects and continues to do that. So Kevin went out to inspect the tree. And Brianna, let's go again. Oh, I didn't try it yet. I'll try it next time. Thank you. I just won't rely on that. Kevin did a very, very thorough job. I think hopefully you've made it through his report, and he's here tonight to talk in more detail about that, but I'll generally go over it. He did a level 3 assessment, which is a very in-depth assessment. That's not an assessment that we normally do on trees in the city to determine whether or not they're hazard trees. He also hired a climbing arborist, and you can see her in this picture to climb the tree and assess it up into the limbs. And he also hired another company to come and do the sonic tomography, which is really kind of the X-ray to see into the tree to see how far the decay goes and how far up into the tree the decay was. So outwardly appears very healthy, but as you look at that tomography, you can see this is a slice of the tree from that. This blue area is the decay rot area in the tree, and this area on the very outer edge, like you saw on that tree, that limb that fell, is the live wood that's remaining. So in assessing the entire tree, in the report that you have, you'll see this column here and here have significant areas of rot or decay. So we talked about, the report talks about retrenchment. You heard some people in the public comment tonight talk about retrenchment, and what that really is, it's a severe pruning. The report recommends if we would to go this route, we'd go about 15 feet, sort of a topping of this tree. So you can see that red line would be about a 15-foot cut around that has the potential to extend this tree standing. And I think you might want to get into it with Kevin when we have that talk. When people are asking, you have to save this tree. What the potential for that really is? What is saving a tree that's dying actually? Are we trying to extend life a few years? We're not going to bring it back to life, but can we keep it standing for a number of years? And what's the safety implications of that? And the liability for the city. We'll talk more about that with Kevin. But as you look at this, that's a pretty drastic cut. It will certainly change the look of the crown of the tree. And some of those limbs are 15, 18 inches in diameter where they would be cut. So you're exposing these big cut sections of live tree to the elements. That may help in one way in reducing weight and wind shear and things like that, but then it also opens up live tree to more disease and rot that can get in a new place. So there's a plus and minus to this thing. Kevin's report will say, or says, and Kevin may talk to it more tonight, that 15 feet may be enough, or it may not. We're still leaving, in his opinion, a lot of heavy wood hanging off this tree, so we're not necessarily solving the problem we're trying to solve and keeping limbs from falling at random times due to decay. There's also an issue of, well, you could say, well, we could go further. We don't want to end up with just a stump, but we could go further in. Kevin feels that 15 feet is about the stress level that this tree could take at one time. So as you cut it back and you're cutting off live sections of the tree, we still need to have large live sections that flower and grow, or we're just doing the tree in a faster process. So we'll get more into retrenchment with Kevin, but that is an alternative, not the alternative that's recommended, but one that we certainly need to know about. Here's the overhead view of the Meeker Oak, and you can see this is the Meeker Oak. This is the historic hangar at the airport. That is also on the historic register. This is Highway 99. You can see that the tree hangs almost entirely over Highway 99. So when we talk about, cabling and support structures under those extremely heavy limbs, we can't do that in the middle of Highway 99. So it's a difficult place to do that kind of work to try to save this tree. It may work on the Capitol campus. If this tree was in a park, we'd put a fence around the drip line and put up any kind of stabilization that we could. But because of the location, the proximity to the historic hangar and Highway 99, we're not recommending that we go that route, and neither is Kevin. Our city's risk manager has talked with the city's insurance provider, which is the Washington City's Insurance Authority. The Insurance Authority has read Kevin's report, and they're recommending that we remove the tree. It's a high risk, high liability situation for the city of Tumwater.
Thank you, David, or Chuck. I mean, not David, that's me.
Tell me what you want. So just, to recap, I think people tonight more and more people are finding out about this. Tumwater residents, county residents, Olympia, and we're getting comments from everyone. And that's what we're supposed to do. Public input is key to what we do. It is difficult. And as Doug Gill pointed out, now that we don't really have a newspaper that covers local stories, everything's online or on your phone. It is difficult to hear things. And it's also difficult for us to get news out. We do Facebook, we do, the city website, we do posts, we do notices and utility bills. We have the city newsletter. We put all Tumwater meetings that we can online and try to get information out to people. This particular issue started last summer. It's been to the tree board public meeting with public comment, 3 different occasions. The last one being just 2 weeks ago. It was at the city council last week, at the council work session, and they had a very similar presentation to what I'm giving you tonight. You're seeing this tonight for a recommendation, and the city council will see it after you're done. So there have been multiple opportunities, and there are still opportunities to come for people to provide input. So as this calendar goes, March 21st today, you're hearing it. We're not doing a public hearing. That was kind of a misprint from where this came from. You're taking public comment. You're going to make a recommendation to the city council. Then on April 2nd, the city council will go through this again. They will take public comment on the issue, and then they will decide based on your recommendation or not based on your recommendation. You know, you're an advisory board, they can take your recommendation or they can choose to do something else, but this is the process we go through, and this is the reason why this board exists. You're the experts on all things historical. So we'll forward your recommendation to them, and then they will discuss it and they'll decide whether to leave the tree on the register or take the tree off the register. So at no point is a decision for you or for them, should we cut down the tree or should we not? It's, are we leaving it on the register or are we taking it off the register? Part of the process is we have to go through city permitting to cut down this type of tree, whether it's in the right of way or whether it's in a park or whether it's in public property. It would require a tree removal permit. That's an application that will go through community development department. They will issue the tree removal permit if the tree is delisted. If the tree is not delisted, they won't issue that tree cutting permit, and we'll have to go through the retrenchment process to the point where it works or doesn't work.
Questions?
Go for it.
Can we go back to the slides
Sure.
previous for that? Yeah, there, okay, that's a good, actually, I want to get to that, but let's go back even further. And one more. What is the, I'm sorry, one more earlier than that. The photo on the left, what direction are we looking at? Is that looking to the south?
Yes, I believe we're looking south there.
Okay, now let's go forward. And before we leave, so that means that the branch to the left is the one that overhangs the highway in some fashion or another.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Let's go forward a couple then. One more. Now, in your comment, Judd, you said that the tree overhangs Highway 99. Now, if you by that mean the Highway 99 right of way, I think you're probably almost entirely correct. But unless there's some skewing of perspective, which to some degree there is, because this photograph
there
looks
is.
like it's taken from the center of the road. But from this perspective, it looks like at most a third of the tree actually overhangs the highway. Is there some optical illusion?
Perspective is a thing in all of these photos. And I actually thought about that, and I'll talk about that in the other photo, but about, the fog line of Highway 99 is right here. So this part of the tree is over the roadway. This section of the tree is certainly endangering the roadway.
And the branch that, with this slide up, the branch that fell last June was where on that image, and where did it land?
I think it was in here, and it landed down here.
In the grassy
Dirt. Yeah.
dirt. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all. Well, I have another technical before we get to Mr. McFarland and the substance of the matter. I'm curious, Chuck, about how you ended your remarks about forthcoming procedure. I'd like you to explain let me run through a couple hypotheticals. They are surely that. We could recommend delisting and the city council could refuse to do so.
Correct.
We could recommend keeping it and the council could delist it by its own volition.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Ultimate authority lies with the city council.
I was going to add before you talk that being on 3 historic commissions at one time or another, I think the biggest misunderstanding of what a historic commission or preservation commission is a recommendation board. It is an advisory board. It is not the end of the road. It is one hoop that the public has to express your views. And then, but the bottom line is the final decision will be made by, in this case, by the Tumwater City Council. And I think that's a real misunderstanding, among other things involving historic commissions, is that they don't understand that this is not the final choice. I also would like to add secondly, and then maybe to staff members here, perhaps the city needs to get more publicity out, maybe with the utility bill, saying here our commission has openings. Would you like to volunteer? Are you aware of Tumwater on Tap? Can you have access? How do you have access to the city council? You know, that type of thing. And I don't know how often the city has done that, but apparently it has been an issue, at least with one gentleman earlier, that it was hard to get in. And I have to admit, I looked at the Zoom address and it reminded me of gobbledygook, which is a word that you can look up if you don't know what it means, but it's legalese. It's a thing, type of thing. And I have had problems with trying to type in the address to a Zoom meeting myself. But anyway, next, Mr. McFarland, so have him on screen. Is that what we're going to do next?
We certainly can. So, you know, our recommendation to you is that you know, the staff recommendation to you based on all that we've seen and heard from Kevin and his sub-consultants is that you recommend to the city council that the tree be delisted. Mainly that's due to what we see in the tree's health and more significantly, the risk it poses through liability to the city of Tumwater. Just 29,000 cars a day go under this tree. It has been failing for years. Just this last limb that fell off kind of highlights the fact of the state it's in. And that's why we had this study done to determine what's wrong with it and how healthy is it and how bad is it. So that's where we're leaving it tonight. I will tell you, should we move forward with delisting this, if this tree does in fact end up coming down, we have, through both Kevin's business and through my staff in Parks and Recreation, we've collected over 100 acorns and have trees sprouting now that are from this tree. And we plan to plant those in city parks and potentially other places, but most specifically in the new Trails End Park that we'll be building in a couple of years, which is close to this site. Also, if the tree is cut down, we do have plans to reuse what wood we can. If you saw the rot on that one display, but if we have some usable wood, we're going to use that either for art or for display, both at City Hall and at the new Public Works Operations Facility over by Trails End.
And that would encourage the city to consider a sign, whether we have a tree there or not, to commemorate the tree. Because we have right now, the last time I remember, is a small little marker.
Yeah,
so something maybe in the future that we can do.
We'll discuss that. We've had some internal discussions on that. It's a difficult place for a sign. It's a sign that nobody sees because there's no sidewalks and really very limited access. So whether it's there or whether it's in a park or somewhere nearby where people can actually see it and get to it easily, I think some sort of historical recognition of what it was, what it is, should.
You could have a brown sign saying historical marker ahead, turn right and next.
More signs, and you have to talk to Commissioner McAndrew about that.
More signs than you have on Pioneer Park.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I have another
Yes.
question on Chuck's testimony or remarks. is there in fact a recommendation from the tree committee or the arborist committee what is their opinion on the matter? You said they've met 3 times, and what conclusion did they come to?
The tree board doesn't have a role in this, oddly enough,
Why did they meet 3 times?
because they talk about city trees. That's their function. So it's not my staff does not staff the tree commission, the tree board. But the staff from Water Resources does. And
Yes.
they wanted to talk about it. They wanted to know more about what Kevin found out. There are arborists on that board.
There's no minutes from that meeting, no recommendation ultimately,
No recommendation.
because they didn't want to, or it just wasn't available to them.
Not their function to provide a recommendation on delisting or not.
Well, no, I understand that's our prerogative in the city councils, but surely they're in a position to offer testimony or comment interpretation on the health of and value of the tree without regard to the delisting matter.
I think they, and I didn't attend those meetings, so I can't say for sure. Having talked to the staff that does support that committee, I think there are both people who are pro delisting and those who are not, or those who are opposed to delisting it.
But there are no minutes or any proceedings from any of those deliberations.
There probably will be minutes. I don't know that the minutes are done. You just saw how long it took for you to get minutes from last year.
Yes.
That's kind of a process that's falling behind in the city
Mhm.
function. At some point, there will be minutes from those meetings.
The
A lot of-
staff person for that committee, I presume, is not in the room here tonight.
No, and she offered to come, and I told her she has been through this presentation many times and heard the same comments from a bunch of people, and she did not need to come tonight.
Well, if there's a future meeting on this topic, I would recommend that we have either that staff person or maybe a representative from the tree board to
Okay,
be party to the dialogue, if in fact that's where we end up.
Okay.
That is,
maybe you can make a motion at the end, one way or the other, David,
Oh,
after we hear.
we have a long way to go yet.
Yes, would that okay with you?
Yeah.
Later on? Okay.
Okay, so Kevin, if we can fire you up, I appreciate you being here tonight. I know you've made quite an effort to come to a number of city meetings in this capacity and talk about your report. We have people who are trying to second guess what you've done or that something else should be done. The city is, as you know, remains very confident in your abilities and the product that you produce and the knowledge you have. So if you could kind of just an overall run of what you did with the tree, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions from our commissioners. And Brianna, if he can. Kevin, are you muted?
Can you hear me
There we
now?
go. Yeah.
I
Perfect.
must have been, sorry about that. Chuck, thank you. And commission members, thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to take one moment, if I may, and just tell people who are watching, listening, and also the commission is that I go back with the city to basically 1997. And one of the early tasks that I came upon, and Chuck, you hit on this a little bit, was that you mentioned, you probably don't even remember, that arborist, as you mentioned, that worked on the oak or worked during trying to figure out what was wrong with the oak. That was me. And so what we found was that the tree had been buried at the flare, the base, by 2 feet of fill. And in digging around the base of this tree, the oak, found that the beginnings of armillaria or shoestring rot was starting to penetrate the tree. And we came up with, in conjunction with Neil Wolpert, with Wolpert's Tree Essentials, or landscape maintenance company at the time, we had an air spade brought in to remove that excess soil from around the base of the tree, expose that armillaria root rot, and then we had actually river rock brought in to fill that void, so we still had air circulation and light in that area to prevent the armillaria to continue establishing or come back. And then further on into the years, I know this is just a blip, like 27 years working with the city and being familiar with this oak. Over that course of time, it's a small bit of time in the course of this beautiful tree's age, but I have been involved with the tree's health and maintenance over this whole period of time. So I want to stress to everyone that this has not been easy at all with my assessment on this tree and determination. I don't take it lightly, and I want that to be out there on record right now. So anyhow, and I can field some questions as I go on here, but as you know, there were 2 failures on that tree last year. One further left or further east of the one that was just reviewed by one of the commissioners in the photos. That one actually did hit the barrier and came onto the highway. I was informed by that by someone with the state hangar who works there, and also staff mentioned that. So there was that failure prior to that larger one that's in the photos, which actually landed on the soil behind the barrier on outside of the highway. That, as you said, Chuck, was sort of the reason for having a more of an evaluation on that tree. I've even gone up in the past and inspected the tree with arborist, with Cascade Tree Experts, and gone up in a bucket and have done aerial inspections of the trees. We've had pruning done to end weight, reduce the end weight on the some of the lateral branches and stems to lighten the load so that we would have less of the potential for branch failure. So again, I've worked with this tree and with many people on keeping it healthy and trying to keep it around for as long as it has been, at least with my watch on it since 1997. So I can start off with the report. I'm not sure how I can be prompted by commissioners if you want to ask me questions and we can go through it. I'm not sure how you want me to proceed on this rather on the report.
I think basically the Historic Commission needs clarification on how you came about with the evaluation. And I know David had a few questions that he would like to ask you. Unless there's somebody else with further questions, I will entertain David if you'd like to make your comments.
Well, yes, I got several, and I could go on until gavelled quiet. So, but I'll get it started, certainly.
We quit at midnight. We cannot go any longer than
Well,
midnight.
we have to quit at midnight. It'll be March 22nd, and we can't have a meeting on the 22nd unless we stop the clock. They used to do that.
Go for it.
Kevin, you would have heard Chuck earlier in his comment refer to that the tree that's dying. So I'd like to ask you, and I think having read your report, I think I can anticipate your answer to half of it, that you are of the opinion that the tree is dying. But I'm more curious more generally as to when the tree started dying, because since we're talking about such a great span of time, the answer to the second question, I think, is more relevant than the first one, even though the first one seems more forward. Question make any sense to you?
Well, it does. I don't believe the tree is dying. In fact, as it was brought up earlier from one of the participants, I have it rated, and I mentioned it being a conflict. I have the tree described in its condition as poor. And then there's the other part where it says the tree, and this is the part, it says it appears to be in good health. So the poor is basically directed at what I know is going on within the tree in terms of the decay and the failures and such. It's not dying. It's just having issues, if you will, with its structure through the wood decay fungi that's throughout most of the tree. So it is still translocating fluids, still conducting photosynthesis, It appears, again, healthy and good health, but structurally it is poor. But the tree is not dying. No.
Okay. So would you care to respond to the tomography? Well, let me ask a question before I get to the mallet and the tomography. Help me with I should have paid more attention sophomore in biology. The wood at the perimeter of the trunk appears to be healthy, and that's what's keeping it alive, just pursuant to your testimony. But
Correct.
It seems as if the core of the tree is where the problem is. Now, all
Yes.
things being equal, is one or more of those sites more or less important, given the broad span of your experience with all things trees?
Well, considering the species of tree, Gary oak or Oregon white oak, it is well known in my world, if you will, in arboriculture, that you can have a decay column or the extent of decay that we show here in the tomography diagram, that the tree can actually still move fluids from the root system, canopy back and forth. And it can actually, and because of the cell tissue being an oak, it can actually still support itself, as in the main stem. And you can have punky, basically not really healthy wood or cell tissue inside the interior of the trunk, and the tree actually can still be or can still support itself. With that said, and I point this out, this decay continues up through the codominant stem and up into the scaffolds toward the left. And that's the problem where I have with this tree, because I believe it is a high risk due to that extent of decay all up through that area I just described. And then also the other stem, the other codominant stem that goes west over the hanger, that is connected to this trunk, as you see this cross section, and it's not well supported. So taking some of those things all into consideration, that's where I have the concern, and this was valuable information from the tomography, and also the input from Tree Solutions was helpful. I couldn't tell him not to come up with his recommendation. I wanted to have his recommendation, and I respected that. So I'm glad it was in, and I included it in the report. So I took many different things into consideration. I'm not sure. I kind of rambled on there. Did I answer some of your question?
Well, let me try a version of the first question. Is part of the tree is sicker than? Well, no, you attested to the fact that the tree is healthy, so I'm going to retract that. Looking for value neutral language. Part of the tree is more at risk than other parts of the tree.
You can say that, yes.
And I infer that by that you mean the part that is to the east.
It's that section there because of the infection, the extent of it, and then again that other part, the other codominant stem that goes out over the hanger.
Right.
What is it attached to? It's attached to a column of not really supportive wood in the main stem, right where that V, right where those two join, or that union.
So did you hear the comment about the tomography and the mallet?
Yes, yeah.
You want to respond to that?
Well, the mallet is reliable. I had the climbing arborist go up. She actually had a probe as well, and the mallet, and her she was able to inspect it with my guidance and report back down to me what she was finding. So I did not choose to have a resistor graft taken up into the canopy. That was just my choice. I felt that I had enough information while she was up there that and what she provided was enough for me to include in my determination.
Okay, now was Tyler Bunton, was he a subcontractor to you? Or was he hired independently by the city?
He was hired independently.
By the city?
Well, yeah, he was. Yes. So I'm sorry. I subbed him, and then the city, with my invoice, the city covered that cost. That was part
Okay.
of what he billed me for that. So yes, he was a sub. Excuse me.
The most prominent aspect of the voluminous public commentary. And I was on the city council in the 1970s. I've never seen anything like it in 50 years. But the aspect of the entirety of your report, and it came up again in testimony tonight, public comment, I should say, and it struck me in reading it, is that it seems there's an internal inconsistency between, I think it would be Mr. Bunton, although it might not be. Is it a he or a she? I'm sorry.
It's a he, Tyler.
Mr. Bunton, he recommends, he agrees with you, the tree is basically healthy and recommends the pruning retrenchment. You yourself in your report and here again tonight say the tree's not dying, it's generally healthy, although it has, you would say, problematic aspects to its condition. So you have two consulting arborists in one manner or another saying the tree is in at least reasonable shape, yet the recommendation regarding its disposition is to cut it down. And I think that's what people have trouble reconciling them. So in other words, your and Mr. Bunton's testimony or analysis is internally inconsistent with just kind of a fair literary reading of the documentation. And I think that's what that was also informed as a preponderant part of public comment. Would you care to address that?
Well, if you will, I'm the lead arborist. I'm the point. I wanted to get that kind of information from Tree Solutions, i.e. Tyler, with the use of the tomography. And I welcomed his input or his information. I took that into consideration, and I basically came up with the determination that it's a high risk and I would remove it. I would recommend removing it.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry. No.
Well,
Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, it's just I understand the conflict and such, but I wanted to make it public, but I still made that determination, took that information and made that determination.
Well, that's commendatory that you shared that in your. It speaks well of you that you included this Bunton report.
Tyler's information. Yes.
Yes, that's well. So, what is the closest example to a tree like the one in question? Where's the nearest tree like this? It's a rarity question.
Yeah, it is. Of the size and age, in the immediate area, I do not know of any. There are some within the city of Lacey, out in some. There's a development that has some open space area, and there's two that are of size and very close to this one, but still not at the size of this one. I don't or age. So yeah, it stands out. It's rare.
So its size, age, and singularity all speak to its importance
and its history.
And its history.
I would add that somewhere in the readings, there was one mention on JBLM on Fort Lewis,
okay,
if I recall correctly.
As to the pruning option that was you refer to it, and Mr. Bunton speaks to it in more detail. The graphic image we had in front of us suggested, and I'm offering in a layperson's descriptor here, but it was a full pruning of the entire crown.
Correct.
Is it conceivable, like I'm borrowing from the field of dentistry, and I'm not a dentist either. Is it, is it conceivable to do a partial retrenchment of the crown that focuses on a particular, on the most what some might consider, and you certainly do consider, the most problematic aspect of the tree's condition? In other words, is pruning retrenchment an all or nothing proposition?
No, it could be, in this case, it's not, it would not be beneficial just to focus on one area or a percentage of, or half or a third. It would need to be, if it were to be applied, in terms of what Tyler describes and presents in his comments, is that it would be all throughout the whole canopy of the tree. And the reason for that, again, is that the codominant stem with its scaffold branches leaning toward the east over the highway, that's the area, as I mentioned before, that has significant amount of decay. So retrenchment on that area, obviously it would take some of that decay wood away, and then you would want to apply that on the west side, because you would want to reduce the end weight of that large codominant stem, because again, remember I mentioned the pore attachment, or what it's attached to is significantly decayed. So you'd want to reduce that weight or that stress load at that union where the inclusion is located, or seam, if you will. So it would be, if retrenchment were to be applied, and again, I don't recommend it in this case, but it would be throughout the whole canopy.
Okay. Now you heard the comment, and we have it in writing too, from Beowulf Brower. Have you seen a full written copy of his testimony, or did you only hear what you hear?
No, I just heard it.
You just heard it?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, this speaks to, I think, the advisability of a work session to go through the Beowulf Brower matrix and actually have someone walk us right through that. I don't propose we do it tonight. I haven't looked at actually I wore a watch for the first time since I retired in 2011. We're already more than
It's past your bedtime.
close. I can see it from here. But I think because the risk assessment form, which of course is what the city's risk advisor is drawing their recommendation form. We have testimony, just at face value. I'm not giving it any valency. It suggests that the matrix is looking for a word that's fair to Mr. McFarland, but at least subject to question. And so I think actually having us be able to walk through that form and actually see what dominoes trip when one box is checked and another isn't, I think that might be a fruitful exercise. I have some other comments I like to make, but I don't have any more questions at this point,
Okay.
since I don't think it'd be fair to ask Mr. McFarland to walk us through that logic model when he doesn't have the written document in front of him.
Of the 7 notifications that we got from the public, I would say that most people who criticized the report pointed out the conflict that they saw between Mr. McFarland and the other report. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Well, yes, but more particularly the email we got very late this afternoon, that all that is true. Yes, that is that inconsistency, I think.
But it seems to me there was one we got this afternoon.
Yes.
But there was one earlier as well.
Yeah, it talks about that that something was listed as likely when maybe it shouldn't have, and it's looking at I'm not very good at crosswords and Sudoku, so somebody has to actually walk me through that matrix to see how a mistake here in the upper left affects a determination in the lower right, speaking metaphorically. I just can't do it with words on a page. I've got to see it mechanistically.
Ms. McFarland, can you clarify a little bit on the matrix?
I can't, well, so there's the matrix of, if you're talking about the evaluation form, risk assessment form,
Yes.
there's the risk categorization, that describes, the tree part that would, in my determination, would be most likely to fail, like part size, fall distance, target number, and so on. And that, I think I'm going to need more time to talk with you folks about that. And then the lower matrix, matrix 1 and matrix 2, obviously connected to what I was just talking about with the categorization. This is what is used for basically the overall or final risk determination.
Okay.
So I would be glad to meet if you have a subcommittee or meet with the commission at another time.
Would it be inappropriate to ask Mr. Brower to participate in that work session?
I would rather not.
Okay.
I think I'll look over his information that he submitted.
Fair enough.
I would not feel comfortable with that.
I understand. That's
Can I-
fair enough.
Can I provide a little input on this?
Yes.
Understanding that there are different views and not wanting to, in your dentist reference, shop doctors until we get the diagnosis we want. Kevin is the city's arborist. We have relied on him, as he said, for many, many years and many successful projects. He is our authority on this subject. So
Fair enough.
we don't want to get too far into the weeds with someone says this or we need to do that. If you want him to look at this particular suggestion and maybe provide us back with comments that we can get to you, happy to do that.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. And I didn't mean to impugn anyone's integrity or credentials. I'm just looking for all of the relevant information from whatever quarter we might get it. That's the range of my questions, Mr. Chairman. I have some more general thoughts and of philosophical and perhaps procedural nature, but maybe I should stop at this point.
We'll let you catch your breath. Other commission members, your comments, concerns, questions?
Yeah, I would actually like to have the matrices of the likelihood of failure and risk rating and assessment summary explained to me too. I feel like I'm kind of cross-eyed here for some reason. So that would be really helpful. And I wanted to also just generally throw out there that it's sort of my view. It's my view that our main concern and main goal is to preserve the, sacred or sacrosanct elements that we can, that, especially ones that we already have listed and worked on, that's, just having the historic value of the tree. And I think is so important that I think we should be using that as our direction. And this is my opinion. And without fully entirely comprehending the whole assessment, and not wanting to, throw out any reports or any of that. It seems to me that the Historic Preservation Commission should recommend doing whatever we can to save the tree for as long as we can. And it would be more in the purview, more in the discussion area for the city council and or staff to judge and to weigh the value and the risk of, the risks of keeping a tree and of, excess costs, what have you. I think that as a pure exercise of historic preservation, I feel like those type of issues are a little bit, maybe I'm choosing to keep blind to those and focus specifically on the historic value. And I think that all the comments that we've heard sort of maybe kind of go along with that, or the majority of what I've heard from comments seem to prioritize the historic value of the tree over and above concerns of safety and costs, which are important concerns and fully relevant and valid, but not up to, I don't feel up to me or necessarily this board to consider to the same value or weight or extent as the historic nature of the tree.
I would say that the general gist that I got from the reading was the fact that a lot of people wanted to keep the tree for a variety of reasons, but I don't know how many of those people knew about the disease that was inside the trunk. That was a problem I had with most of the readings that I made was if you told me the tree was going to be chopped down and I didn't know anything else other than that, and I would come unglued saying that's an historic tree and culture, Native Americans and what have you. But do I know about the other part of it? And that is the diagram that we had showing the tree has a rot all the way from the root to the branch looking over to the left. So I'm not sure how many people knew that. I don't know. So that would be my only concern about making that comment. Other people? Other comments?
Yes. I was going through those 72 emails that we got and input from the public, and the passion for Tumwater history and heritage did my heart
Impressive.
good. It was good to see the public input and their concern for our history, and that's what makes this community unique and special in the whole state of Washington. A lot of it was overwhelmingly in favor of not delisting the tree or taking it down. And I tend to agree with that. I would not approve delisting right now. Want to see it, there may be retrenchment and, all trees eventually fall down. We just experienced the bush butternut tree going down a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago now. And Tumwater is historic and unique, and that heritage is unique. And we just need to, and this, we're a historic preservation commission, not just a historic chronicling commission where we write down things and take pictures of it and put it in a museum somewhere. This is an artifact that we need to try to preserve as long as we possibly can before it eventually will fall. Maybe not in our lifetime because it lasted 400 years of all things. It's a part of our culture, part of our heritage, and that's important. It's in fact, it outlives, it goes farther back, deeper roots, I guess you'd say, because it's 400 years. That's when the natives were using it as a trading route, and then the Hudson Bay Company also adapted their trails and used that as a trading route, and then we extended the northern extension of the Oregon Trail to the Cowlitz Trail, and all those pioneers came through, and that tree was there. And there was others around it too, not just one. I came across something from the 1853, the Harper family. They came to Puget Sound in 1853, so we were maybe 8 years of being Tumwater. But Reverend Harper was here with his family. And the note says their first camp on Puget Sound was real close to the big oak trees that are seen on the Pacific Highway at the Olympia Airport. The family stayed there for some time while the Reverend Harper looked around. He finally took up a donation claim on the west side of the prairie, Bush Prairie. He and the boys built a log house where they lived for 6 years. So I found that the family history that they gave to me. And so it was a landmark to all the settlers traveling north on the Cowlitz Trail. And then all the trees were eventually, I mean, they all fall and fail, but it represents the heritage of our historic community that we need to preserve and really need to highlight more. So that, I mean, I would recommend to the council to put higher priority on historic preservation for the sake of tourism and the growth. I think the future of the past shows a bright future. Bit of phrase to it. Native trading ground at Wagon Road and roughly blazed by the 1845 Tumwater founders. Simmons Bush Party came through and they went through by there too. Then Olympia Tenino Railroad went by that tree, somewhere close to it on this way to Tenino. And then later on, Old Highway 99 and Highway 1, all that traffic past that tree. It's a trademark, a landmark of Tumwater, and it honors our history. And the Olympia Airport developed around it. Old Highway 99 widening was diverted around it to recognize its value. It was worth them the extra money to do that, liability issues. There are really, for a historic town, there's very few remaining landmarks in the Tumwater area, and this is one of them. And we can promote tourism and honor our heritage and teach future generations that I think the historic cultural value outweighs the legal financial liability. And we need to take risk to preserve it as long as we possibly can. And we got some very qualified arborists and other tree people that can help do that as long as we can keep it living. And eventually we know it's going to fall down, but eventually we're going to pass away and new generations are going to look at it.
I'm going to be devil's advocate.
I'd rather have an angel's advocate.
I don't know which way I'm going to go because I really don't know, because I try to come into this meeting with an open mind. But the issue is basically there's no question that it's historic. There's no question that it's big. No question that the Native Americans burned the prairies to keep the canvas growing and what have you. And I appreciate that. But the other bottom line is if that tree was on my property and I was liable for it, I don't know if I could keep it if it's going to fall upon the house next to me. And that's the issue that I run into. I'd love to hang on to the tree. I mean, if a doggone thing could last another 1,000 years, it'd be wonderful. But the lifespan is about 400 years, if I remember reading Wikipedia correctly this afternoon. The Gary Oak is 200 to 400 years, if I recall correctly, and sometimes 500.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is this tree has, according to our city expert that deals with trees, he's indicating that this tree is unhealthy and is unsafe. So I don't know, maybe we need to go another direction, and perhaps we can have some other arborist take a look at it, or we can prune it and hopefully come back in 5 years and say, is it better or worse? Is it safe or not safe? So I'm looking for answers, I guess. But anyway, end of my discussion.
Maybe we can call it the Tumwater family tree.
Yeah, could be. It's been here for a long time, that's for sure.
It honors our roots, and I can go out on a limb and suggest a Develega branch office or something like that. But
Renee, I think you had your hand up.
But retrenchment is a way to keep it from falling on the hanger, and the weak side can be braced up or trimmed enough to make it safer for the traffic and the cars going through. I think it's worth the effort, and I agree with Alex that it would be well worth the effort to spend the money and effort to preserve it as long as possible, realizing that it's eventually going to go to the way of the bush butternut tree, and we'll have to make cuttings and grow new trees from the mother tree that we're doing with the bush butternut tree, and apple trees too. I think of the Northern Spy apple trees that we have on our place that Jesse Ferguson planted. And one of those is sprouting on Yelm Highway now, one of the cuttings from that. So that's worth the effort to do that kind of thing too. Yeah, longer term goal is for the cuttings probably, and because it's going to disappear eventually. But as long as we possibly get hold on to it, I think it's our duty to try to preserve it.
Renee?
I'm not sure I have much to add to what Don just said. I do think our role is to preserve our history, and yet we know that everything that is living is dying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if retrenchment can preserve that beautiful tree that I drive by at least twice a
Mhm.
day, and I admire it every time I
Yeah.
drive by it.
Yeah.
If retrenchment can save it, we don't know how long. Maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's another 50 years. We don't know, but it seems like even though there is a liability, and I feel your pain, Dave, because I deal with liability issues every day.
Mhm.
But if there are ways that we can preserve it for another 5 years or another 50 years or another 100 years, even though the expected lifespan of a Gary Oak might be 300 years, we've held on to a piece of our past. And that seems really important.
Yeah.
Even though I recognize the liability. I mean, there's the historic hangar there and there's Highway 99. And we know it's not going to live forever. And I value the fact that we're hatching saplings from it. But I just think that piece of our history will never be here again.
Mm.
Okay, thank you. David.
I could have a second bite at the apples. Talking about tree metaphors.
It's got a worm in
So
it.
the least consequential, again, flattering myself that anything I have to say is consequential, but the least consequential comment, Dave, is that you referred to the tree as being unhealthy. Yet we see it in writing, and we had testimony tonight saying the tree is healthy. The tree's not unhealthy, and it's dying to the extent that any living organism is dying, to your point, Renee.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think if there's a aspect of the city's communication strategy around this, what little I've seen, it's that the tree is dead, it's unhealthy. These terms get into the public parlance, whereas the nuanced proposition that Mr. McFarland and Mr. Brunton hold forth on, none of that nuance ever gets through in the way the city, or some aspects of the city, including the chairman of our own commission, again, at least consequential comment, have characterized it. So the tree is not unhealthy.
Mhm.
It has, my preferred way of thinking of it, it has problematic features to its existence.
I was referring to unhealthy, what McFarland said.
Mm.
Mr. McFarland
Yeah.
didn't say it was
But
unhealthy. He
he
said the
said
tree
it's
is healthy.
Yes, I understand that. I should have said a disease within the system.
Be that as it may, I said it was the least consequent, but I'd like to go up to 30,000 feet. Because I'm very frustrated by the circumstance the commission finds itself in. And I've made no secret of that to several of you and to certain figures and people associated with the city generally. It is truly distressing that this committee and its work, and it's a good committee. We have the best chairman we could hope to have, vitally interested citizens, a former state legislator, with all humility, former head of the State Historical Society.
Mhm.
Yet the only time we're brought to bear is when some vagabond burns a house and we have to spend half a year talking about wallpaper, or a 400-year-old tree has a branch fall off, which is to say there's never any, and I use that word advising, there's never any proactive development except for my personal intercession, which I've spent years working about getting historic Highway 99 signs
Mhm.
placed in the city. There is never any affirmative development. Thank God someone back in 1985 listed this tree, or we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Mm.
When was the last time this committee listed a historic property? I've been on this committee for 10 years, not once. And I don't know how and by what means the gist of what I'm saying gets communicated to the city council, but we need to send a strong message. This is one of the most historic places in the state of Washington. And we're talking about one of the most historic aspects of this committee. And we're only talking about it because they're concerned about the risk and liability. Nothing about the cultural value, nothing about the environmental value.
Mhm.
The whole matrix of appraisal is risk and liability. And yet to Alex's point, they're asking us historians to weigh in on a decision that one could argue we're not prepared to or capable of. We don't have the core expertise. We can evaluate history, we can evaluate culture. I'm not going to suggest I can substitute my judgment for Mr. McFarland. Yet here we are making this decision. So it's the larger context here that I find truly upsetting.
Mhm.
And we need my message to the city council, if there's a city councilman listening now, it's time for the city council to invest in this body and what we do in terms of what we can do for this city.
Yes.
And let's stop monkeying around. Now, towards that end, Mr. Chair, although I'd be the last person to be arguing against posting signs, as I said, I've spent 6 months lobbying our director to get some historic signs, historic Highway 99 signs placed on the highway out there, which by the way, goes by this tree, not
Yes, yes,
coincidentally.
yes. Yep.
We need more than plaques. There's a tremendous opportunity
Mhm.
relative to the specific subject at hand, which is the sustenance, sustainability, and perpetuation of Gary oak trees in our environmental home. And I guess like Chuck, I would ask you because you'd have the closest, and I have other comments to make, but I'm going to digress to make a question. What is the current status of the park that's proposed to go in out at Trails End? Where does it stand?
The master plan is complete and we're looking at construction in 25, 26.
Does that include a botanical element?
It does have a number of oak trees planned, yes, as part of the planting plan.
Is there any,
And there's an existing oak tree on site that's been there we haven't aged it. I'd say, yeah, I'm not even gonna guess. It's old.
well, I asked the question earlier, what the closest, no, I heard Lacey. I didn't know, and I didn't hear. any
There is an
testimony.
oak tree about 50 yards away from the Meeker Oak on the other side of 99. It's not as big. There's also an oak tree at the Trails End.
So a tree of that size, one has to go to Lacey or to Fort
Correct.
Lewis, but there are others around it.
Yeah.
To the point that's been made amply and well, and I can't do better about the value of this tree. And whoever it was in 1985 or 95 had the wisdom, the foresight to list this tree.
Mhm.
I'd like to know who that person,
Yeah.
somebody must have nominated.
Yeah.
Somebody must have wrote the nomination. I'd like to know who that was, quite honestly. But I want to build on that long-range thinking, because I think we got to go beyond the point in the particularity of this case, this tree, this species. I think we need to make a strong, in chapter 2.62 of the Tumwater Municipal Code, the historic preservation section, chapter, section 2.62.040, paragraph paragraph D, powers and duties, subparagraph 9 is the following paragraph. Review and comment to the city council on land use, housing and development, municipal improvement, and other types of planning and programs undertaken by any agency of the city, other neighboring communities, the county, the state, or federal governments as they relate to historic resources of Tumwater. That's within our preview to comment, presumably unsolicited. So I don't know what, we can go to the council meeting on April 2nd. This meeting's being recorded. Maybe we can ask staff to send it to the city council. But if there's a motion to be made tonight, I would make the motion that the city take affirmative steps without any regard to the disposition of the tree in question, that the city commit itself to a perpetuation of this species in the adjoining neighborhood, including the triangular plot of ground right across the street when Bonniewood Drive was relocated. you know, the triangle I refer to, would be an ideal location. In fact, that should be made, and it's part of my incipient motion and recommending pursuant to subchapter 9, our ability to recommend to the council that the city designate, and it's public right of way. I've checked, city already owns it. It's defunct right of way, that be made a part of the city's public park system. And that a new grove of Gary Oaks be planted on that parcel in anticipation of the moment, inevitably, when the subject tree in question meets its inevitable end. And I guess that is my motion, Mr. Chairman. That's my only motion, since I think we need other information before we can proceed relative to the listing, delisting. That is my motion.
I appreciate the motion. Make it 25 words or less to clarify, to make sure that we understand what your motion is.
The pursuant to this chapter, talking about our ability to offer advice and counsel to the city council. Any program or agency related to historic resources as a function of this meeting, we recommend that the subject parcel in question be added to be made a public park and devoted to a perpetuation of the species in question.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I know the city council is concerned about finances and liability and.
That's their problem.
But you know what? They've spent millions of dollars on the brew house tower, and rightfully so. But what's it going to cost us to preserve this tree for a few more years? Nowhere near the millions of dollars we spent and want to spend more on the brew house. So we need to expand our vision, like Dave's saying here, that this is a historic town, and it's not just a brewing town. It's the first permanent American community north of the Columbia. And it was racism in Oregon that helped start Washington State. I mean, it's just interesting how this little town is so important and the culture is so rich. And these people the 72 people that responded had that emotion, that passion that came through those. And I just love to see that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Can I get one more clarification from Kevin, so we're all clear on where we're standing before we make that motion?
Okay,
Or are we voting on Dave's motion?
we're on voting on Dave's.
Okay,
motion.
let's go that. Sorry about that. But before we vote on the tree, I think we have.
This is separate from the tree.
Yes.
He
okay.
changed it. That's why I wanted him to clarify what his motion was. That's the reason why I did it. Because David, you had two there at one point. I was making sure that. we
My
vote.
motion only involves that subject property.
Yeah, that's why I asked you to repeat it.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Is there any further discussion on the oak tree and whether we delist it or trim it or whatever? Chuck, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, Kevin, I think a point we missed, and I think it came up in your discussion with the city council, was regarding retrenchment and your feelings on does retrenchment alleviate the city's risk, the risk that the tree is going to fall? Does it lower our liability? Does it solve our problem with really having the tree fall on someone or a car or a building? Can't hear you.
Unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
How's that?
That's good.
Got it.
Okay, sorry about that. At my report, I addressed that, but yes, I don't. In my professional opinion, if retrenchment is applied, I do, in fact, still feel that the tree would be a high risk.
Okay, thank you. So, it's not my job to talk you into voting one way or the other. That's your job to decide. I just want to make sure we're clear. The city's position as far as liability goes. We are going to be negligent if something happens on Highway 99 or in the hangar building or around the tree. We know the problem exists, and we know the fix that we're going to try to do isn't going to absolve us of liability should something happen. So, while it's great to talk about history, and obviously, we're all about that. Nobody wants to cut down a tree. When we start talking tens of millions of dollars in a lawsuit that citizens of Tumwater are going to have to pay should something happen, then that's really where the rub comes with what do we do with this tree? So
Chairman.
subsequently, that's why our insurance authority advised us it needs to come down.
I'm of the opinion that we have before us conflicting testimony of a procedural matter relative to the evaluative matrices. And that it would be among a whole level of imprudencies. Given that fact, it would be particularly imprudent to make a decision one way or another until we have a work session where we can go through that matrix and even then have the dispositive discussion about whether to list or delist. But I don't think even granting Alex's point, which Chuck has just argued against,
I think
that in other words, we're being asked to make a biological, botanical
I
decision.
think what you're saying, David, is that the commission needs to have more information.
I certainly do.
I would tend to agree with you.
I want to.
I manage to figure out his matrix, as far as imminent and likely, unlikely, likely, and very likely. I understand that. But I think what you're saying is that we need more information on how can we preserve the tree and avoid the liability.
No, I don't think, I think we have all the information we're likely. to
Okay,
have.
so what you want is more,
The question that's certainly top of mind for Mr. Denny is the probability, lack of probability of the trough.
okay,
tree
gotcha,
fall.
okay.
That's why we're here to begin with. I mean, everyone would grant there's based purely on the historicity. It's a no-brainer.
Yes.
Why you'd never delist this tree. So external factors are impinging on it. But the key external factor, certainly top of mind for Chuck, is that, and our consultant, is that matrix, which I think in good faith, someone has questioned the logic model of certain determinations. Now, we've already determined we're not going to have a debate, dueling arborists, but since we have the contrary, we have the thesis from Mr. McFarland, and he can defend it, and he seems disposed to. And we have the antithesis by this other individual. Somebody has just simply got to walk through the game, as it were, and does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying that in itself makes the decision for us, but at least we ought to know, we ought to have a better understanding of the improbable, unlikely. I mean, it's like a 3-level chess game. I mean, for me, it's very difficult to understand what's being analyzed there.
Gotcha.
So, and if we don't have that work session, per Alex's point, I come back to it for the third time because it was so well made. Maybe that work session and the analysis of that matrix ought to be done in front of the city council at a work session. In fact, Chuck, let me ask, has that been done?
They have talked through Kevin's assessment with Kevin just last week.
But they haven't had the antithetical argument that we've had submitted as testimony here tonight and in writing.
I don't think we had it at that time. No, but they, like I spoke to before, they see Kevin as our arborist and our expert on this subject.
And no one's arguing that, Chuck. I think that's a straw man argument. Because we have a consultant doesn't mean we can't take public testimony that argues a contrary opinion. Those are not in conflict with one another. But you need to take the one to inform the other. But I go back to my near conclusive thought. Maybe we're not again, for the fourth time. Maybe this ought to go, since the city council's got to make the decision ultimately. And they can infer whatever they want from the fact that I don't think there's going to be a motion to delist it tonight. I'm not prejudging anything. But maybe they need to have this testimony, the antithetical view, and have their own walkthrough. We can attend if we like. They can kick it back to us. This is not, again, the last bite at the apple. But that's where I stand tonight.
David, it sounds like what you're saying is that you'd like, I'm not going to make a motion, but let me clarify. It seems to me you're saying that this commission should recommend to the city council that more research should be done in a work session. Maybe we can make a motion to that effect. Is that what you're?
I'm only proposing one aspect of work. We have, Mr. McFarland can speak to this if he has the time and inclination. But it seemed to me in reading his report, his ultimate recommendation was based very heavily on that matrix. And we know that it's guiding the city's point of view and the risk assessment office.
Correct.
We have public testimony that calls that matrix into question. Somebody has got to reconcile that. It could be us, but for the fifth time, I'm suggesting maybe the city council have that work session, having benefit of the antithetical argument regarding those matrices.
That's what I was trying to clarify. I think you have a motion.
No,
No,
not making.
that from our recommendation from the Historic Commission, our recommendation to the city council.
I mean, do we have to have a motion to say we want to have more work done?
Nope.
Okay. That's what I don't need a clarification on. Thank you. Any other comments?
By the way, that's just I know I'm talking a lot here. Really wound up. Happens every 10 years. This is my thinking. I'm not trying to force anything on the commission, but if anyone
Understood.
has a contrary point of view, I'm more than willing to listen to it. And
Okay. What do you want to do?
I do think we need more time. We got this kind of thrown at us almost last minute. I mean, it may have been in the works for a while, but we hadn't heard about it at the commission level. And so a lot of the public comment
Okay.
swarmed in on us and I loved it, but it's not, we haven't had time to digest it hardly.
Okay.
Right.
I like
have-
Dave's and Alex's thoughts.
I just had one quick point to try to get onto the record is that it seems to me that there might be some deep pockets that we could approach to set up a fund or to help fund the preservation of the tree. Number one being the port, deep pockets. Number two being potentially the tribe. If they wanted to express some interest in preserving the tree, that could be a good way to pick up some funds to help, because it will be expensive no matter what.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I would add, and those are great comments. I would add that funding is not an issue with this in either scenario. We have a tree preservation fund. A lot of development that happens in the city has to pay into the tree preservation fund. We take care of trees all over the city all the time. So caring for a tree, the financial aspect of that is not an issue.
Good.
Okay. I think we have reached a conclusion.
I'm not hearing a motion.
I'm not hearing a motion. And I don't hear any new business because we didn't have one. So I'm going to entertain adjournment.
I move
Can
to.
can you provide me with a little more clarity on the direction of what you want to talk about next? You want to address the public comment and the alternative methods that might be further reviewed by Kevin for comment and really get into the details of that? Is that where we're headed?
yeah, I think that's very helpful, Chuck. Let me jump in here, having created the vortex that I feel.
Is this 10 years up? You're doing a great job, David. Thank you for your time and effort. Truly.
Mr. McFarland himself said he was not fully conversant in the antithetical analysis that we received in testimony. Therefore, I move that we have a follow-up work session with Mr. McFarland, where he's had a chance to evaluate the antithetical argument, walk us through the matrices, so we can. Let me just digress. Are all of you familiar with the game Pachinko?
No.
You are, Renee. You know, you drop a disc here and it could go straight down, or it could go way over here. Those matrices, they're an intricate game of Pachinko relative to the fate of this tree. We ought to run the exercise a couple times, one time, and have Mr. McFarland do both. Certainly, we're not opposing a debate, but respond to. I think, by all accounts, professional analysis, not necessarily his. Let's just run through a couple permutations and see if there's any merit. Now, again, I'm not saying that that exercise in itself is dispositive. Not saying that at all. In other words, if it should come out that the argument we heard in testimony tonight is in fact mistaken, that doesn't mean, okay, we're going to delist. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I think since the impulse to delist is heavily based on those matrices, we owe it to ourselves to run through that. Or again, for the sixth time, somebody in the city, maybe the city council, run through those matrices and come to their own conclusion.
It will support the council's decision. I mean, it'll be more informed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the
Does that
difficult-
clarify things, Chuck?
I got it. The difficulty in sending it to city council for that study is that they're still reliant by city code on a recommendation from you before they can make a decision on list or delist. So you have to provide them with a recommendation before they can take action.
And we have to go through that exercise.
Yes,
Yeah.
clear. And to speak on your other issue, which you're clearly very passionate about,
Park,
no, that
reactive.
but that's good. As far as
Argue against more park property.
well, you know, more park property means we need more park staff to take care of it, and that generally doesn't coincide. But I'm all for that. No, this is kind of relevant to that. Your discussion about what does the Historic Commission do? You don't do what's outlined in city code as you just read. Neither does Parks Commission. Those are very old documents that have not been updated probably since the 80s. This commission in particular used to have funding for staff. We used to pay Thurston Regional Planning Council to
Yeah.
provide
Yeah.
support staff for the Historic Commission.
Yeah.
Plus, we had a historic coordinator position within the city. During the budget process, Thurston Regional Planning funding was cut. That went away. Then we staffed the Historic Commission with our city's historic coordinator. Through budget cuts, that position went away. And we didn't have staff for the Historic Commission. So they said, here, Parks Department, the Historic Commission, me, is yours. And I've talked with the city administration about this, with some council members about this. I don't have a lot of time to give you, and you don't get a lot of time from me. So your ability to be more and do more is going to be reliant on what the city council wants to reinvest in your commission. So my suggestion would be to direct us to work on a joint meeting between the Historic Commission and the City Council, which happens often between the City Council and, say, the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Like that.
Sit down at a big table, whether it's
Yes,
you know,
yes.
over coffee or having lunch or whatever it is. Have that meeting and talk about what are their expectations of you and what are your expectations of them. What can we do with history? As Don talked about, how important is Tumwater in history, and what are we doing with that? When we haven't done anything with it for really quite a while.
Probably since the tree was this.
Right. We haven't put a house on the historic register since I took over. We haven't done anything with the historic register. We just don't have the people to do it or the time
Yeah,
to do it.
yeah.
So it is going to take some reinvestment, but I feel your pain, and you are correct that you are kind of floundering without support. So maybe that's not a happy note, but I think the good side of that is we can have that conversation with the city council and try to move things forward.
Sounds like we're heading in the right direction. And I think the Historic Commission will appreciate what we're doing and where we're headed. And David,
Well, Chuck, are you going to organize a pachinko work session?
I think we have one somewhere in the rec department.
Yeah.
We'll bring that too. Yeah. I will try to organize that as we can coordinate with Kevin as soon as possible.
okay.
Will there be any other opportunity, even though we've seen a lot, but would there be any other opportunity for the public to interact or correspond or attend or weigh in the work session process or that meeting
Well,
in any way?
all of your meetings are public meetings. If there's a quorum of you, it's a public meeting and anybody can come. So they might not have the opportunity to weigh in. And particularly at a work session, we don't allow that because it doesn't help with the work session process. But at any of your meetings, any of the city council meetings, any of the city council work sessions, people are always welcome. And it's even easier when you can just sit at home on the couch and watch it on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
David,
Yes.
thank you for tonight. I think you did most of the work for us, so I really appreciate that. And what you said in tonight's meeting will be in red in the minutes next time, so it'll stand out on how much you put in.
Actually, I have a follow-up. Of course I do. Just when we appear to be done. So Chuck, is there any means other than one or more of us showing up at the next council meeting? They have the essence, if not the verbatim account of the motion that was passed by us conveyed to the city council. How will that be conveyed?
I don't know that that would be beneficial. I think your next move for the city council is a recommendation on the tree.
No, I'm referring to the park, the triangular park parcel.
Yeah, I have never looked at that parcel. But you're saying it is city right away, the
Yes.
entire triangle?
Chuck, I'm sorry, I'm not asking for your recommendation. We made I want the city council. That is our message to the city council. We can have a work session and we can talk about what's possible and not possible. We'll be told how there's a shortage of resources. We need more police and fire. We need more beer festivals. Now, if we were to say we need more fireworks, I could go along. So I can.
I knew that was coming.
I can predict but we should still have it. But I think we all gotta be realists. Again, I go back to I've been active in the city governance of this municipality for over 50 years. I've never seen anything like the outpouring of the community relative to this tree.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And our response regarding the acquisition of an adjoining parcel of property to create a park parcel in respect of that community expression of interest and for that tree needs to be forwarded to the city council with all alacrity. And I'll go there myself if I have to, but I think you should go to them at your next opportunity and say, this is what they haven't made a decision on the other business yet, but this is what they did say. And I would ask that be forwarded to them with all due dispatch in order to signal the floundering nature of our predicament and our frustration.
Okay, consider it done. I'll get on the agenda with that.
Motion for adjournment,
I move.
second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting, so thank you for coming. Oh, gotta have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay.
All in favor,
People, thank
leave.
you for your input. I was really impressed by the output and concerns and talks and what have you. So good job, all of you. See you on April 18. Is that the date? I think it is.
Or whenever. A work session could be in the date.
It could be tomorrow. Yeah.
Not that it should.